We ask you every week which topics you'd like us to focus on, and we read your comments all the time and the emails that come through. A topic that is always coming up is around investment, and more specifically, property investment. So we decided to reach out to a property investor, someone who has experience in the business, to come and answer the questions that you have asked. I first met Ernest Lukovnikovas at our fifth birthday party. Froots turned 5 in July, and we had a little bit of a celebration. And Ernest came and we got to talking, and I thought he's the perfect person to answer all the questions that you have been asking. Ernest was voted the best estate agent in the Northwest, and this was in 2023. So I'm looking forward to hearing all he has to say about his journey. Welcome to From Roots to Fruits, Ernest.
Thank you very much for having me, Aline.
Could you please give us an introduction about your journey to property investment?
Of course, yeah. So my name is Ernest Lukovnikovas. I started my investment and property journey by probably just wanting something different than, a regular 9 to 5 job working until, I'm 65. And the inception of that thought probably occurred at one of my first jobs. So I was unlucky or lucky enough to very quickly end up in a job with quite poor management, poor company ethics, and low pay. So I was working very long hours and doing food delivery in the evenings for extra cash. That was quite some years ago now, but yeah, that made me start thinking of alternatives to being employed. And doing deliveries as well gave me time to listen to audiobooks and educational videos and educate myself on the topic. So I first listened to Rich Dad Poor Dad at that point, and that was the kickstart to me starting to explore the space essentially. So after that, it impacted my mindset and goals quite a lot. So after listening to it, I started going in a certain direction much more directly, and even my job choices were quite particular at that point and education focused. So I went into a few sales jobs. So I did door-to-door sales at first, then telesales. They were all selling windows and double glazing and solar energy products.
That must have been brutal.
It was, yes. So I realized that why it was called cold calling, because you're very cold when you're outside of people's houses trying to sell them windows when, well, they already have them. Yeah, but it was a great experience in terms of learning and further kind of cementing my views that I don't want to be doing that, until I'm old. So yeah, afterwards I went into an estate agency role, into a small estate agency in South Holland District Council, Lincolnshire. It was like a family-run business. Yeah, a couple of friends set it up, God, 60 or 70 years ago, and they were still running it directly without being very overly big and corporate. And that's where I met a very good friend of mine, David Wilson. So he was the owner of the estate agency. He was also a chartered surveyor, and he's been running it for over 60 years at that point. So yeah, he's just one of the kindest and knowledgeful people that I've ever met, and he was just happy to share that knowledge to show somebody else was keen to teach his craft essentially. And he did help me in more ways than he probably realized over that journey. So after we made some difference there, after we did what we could with the markets, I decided to move to a large national estate agency. They were more focused on investments and kind of fast selling, fast sales, acquiring properties, doing them up, renting them out. Yeah, and that's where I was awarded eventually the second best estate agent in the country. Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah. That was after some years of me being in the state agency, and then I realized with all the knowledge I collected that it was just time to move on and do something, direct, start building my own portfolio and start helping other people build theirs as well at the same time.
So interesting. And what have you learned in your journey as an estate agent that has helped you with property investment?
It would probably be very difficult to boil it down to something very single. There's just so much that you learn about the industry while working in it, and well, from sales skills completely unrelated to property to building pathology, then sales and conveyancing, how all of that works, then even insights into how estate agents work, how their minds work, what they look for in a buyer. So it all, like, all of that helps dealing with them now from a different side, from the buyer's perspective. Yeah. So, but if I was asked to select the most important aspect, I'd say learning to accurately value properties, both for rent and sale or remortgage. Yeah, it's the single most important skill essentially you can learn when property investing. Because if you get it wrong, you're already on the back foot when just starting. You can have all of the other figures right, everything else correct, but if you have overestimated what you are going to get for it, both in terms of the mortgage and in terms of the rental, it's quite difficult to push that figure up.
Thank you for sharing. Really, really interesting. And when people talk about property investment, there are different routes and strategies. Could you explain them, please?
Oh, so yeah, there are so many different strategies, and even I would say different buzzwords that the property gurus are coming up with. So you hear pretty much every 6 months or so, they add another R on the end of BRR, and it's starting to get very, very long, and yeah, and just hype around different strategies. I normally, what I do is I put the strategies into two broad categories. So we've got strategies where you buy and own the property, and then we've got ones where you don't, where you essentially just control the asset for a time being. So the latter of those being rent-to-rent strategies. So those have received quite a lot of hype currently. They are potentially the lowest barrier to entry, but they obviously come with their own risks. So rent to rent would be where you essentially rent a property from a landlord for a cheaper price than you are looking to rent it out to someone. And that could be either what's called rent to SA, where you rent it as a serviced accommodation, so on Airbnb, Booking.com, or to some professionals working in the area on like short-term contract basis, or you can do it as an HMO. So you can rent the property out as a whole, split up into rooms, and rent the rooms out to different people. Now, we usually don't focus on these. They can be absolutely profitable if they're done right, but yeah, we usually don't focus on them due to a couple of things. So capital appreciation is obviously lacking on them, as you don't actually own the asset. There's also vulnerability to external factors such as, well, for example, COVID. So when COVID hit, it wiped out quite a lot of rent-to-rent businesses. And yeah, they might show better returns on paper, they might look more attractive, but there's also so much that can go wrong. And it's for that reason we kind of put it into more of a property job category rather than a property investment. Once again, there are people who are doing it successfully and very successfully, but we just focus on more kind of long-term growth strategies rather than job category, as I mentioned. So then there are the Bible strategies, which I can go into a bit more depth into. The simplest of them being buy-to-let, so just the standard buy-to-let, and you can do that with refurbishment or without, depending on the project, but it will fall into the same category as the buy, refurbish, refinance, or any of the names that are popular for them, where you will buy a property, you'll do some works to it, you'll try to boost the value up, and eventually you will try to remortgage that to pull some money out while you grow in your portfolio and continue going. Yeah, the works is currently the part where you more so need to do it now than you used to before, and because of how the markets have gone recently and what is available to purchase, it's normally more lucrative to buy something and do some works to it. Otherwise, it's a bit more difficult. Is The vendors don't allow as much kind of profit margin in that they try to maximize. If the property is already done up, they will try to get as much as possible for it, obviously. So you do, if you do works, you get some forced appreciation added into it. And the keys with buy to let in general are to buy in the right areas, add some value if possible, and then mortgage or remortgage and repeat that process, obviously. You'll then get decent rental, which the rental part will cover your mortgage and management and all of your other expenses and will leave you with a little bit of profit. It's not going to be, amazing. You're not going to become a millionaire from that overnight, but it's there to cover essentially to cover the mortgage and get the property without having to pay into it every month. Now, the biggest moneymaker here is the leverage capital growth. So this is why property in general is considered to be such a good asset class, is because you can use leverage. So you can't do the same with stocks or shares. In here, let's say you're buying £100,000 property, you are putting a quarter of the money in, 25%, which is your deposit. Let's say you're getting 5% rental yield and 5% capital growth. So rental yield is there to cover your mortgage and your expenses. The capital growth for you, effectively, that's 20% because the whole property grows in value instead of just your quarter. So that's times 4. So you're already getting 20% return on your money, and 5% is a very, very modest figure from the current growth at least in the northwest areas. HMOs are cash flow focused, so you'll get significantly higher rental return on those at a drawback of more upfront cost. For example, we did a 7-bed conversion recently, and that can easily cost upwards of 100,000 just for the building works alone. So yes, you buy a property. We bought a 2-bedroom terrace. We extended it. We added a loft conversion to it. Even with knowing the kind of best builders in the area and having our own builder company, it's still obviously 6 figures on that side. So there's also more management with HMOs and more tenant turnover, which you can obviously outsource, but it is something to consider, and the capital appreciation normally is a little lower than just standard buy-to-let because it's already a business rather than just a property that you can easily sell on. So they'll work for people who want to replace their income as soon as possible. So this would be somebody looking to quit their job as quickly as they can for property and take that full-time income from property. They're also significantly more complicated to find and convert as well. So there is much more to take into account when looking for one. For example, Article 4 areas, which don't allow permitted development, which essentially means that you would need to, even if you're turning the property into a small HMO, you would need to apply for planning permission. And usually you won't get that because Article 4 is introduced when there are too many HMOs in the area by the council sorts. Also, different councils will have their own licensing standards in terms of how big the rooms need to be, what amenities need to be provided, and all sorts of other, even soundproofing, soundboarding, and insulation. Also, how the properties are valued for mortgage is different with these. So you can get normal, what we call bricks and mortar valuation, which is just how much a property is worth on the open market as a property, as something to sell to anyone, to any of the open public. And then you can also get a commercial valuation. So this is what we would strive for when converting an HMO. It normally is quite a bit more than a bricks and mortar valuation, and it's already based on the income of the asset rather than just kind of how much the shell is worth. So it's being valued as a business rather than just a property. What you need to take into account as well when you're looking for those types of properties is it's fairly similar to how you would find a buy-to-let. You obviously need great fundamentals in the area. You need good transport links, good work opportunities, and amenities like shopping centers and doctor surgeries, etc., transport links. But you're looking at a slightly different tenant profile in this case. So you're probably looking at somebody who's younger, somebody who's working professional, maybe they work at a local hospital or something like that. So you're trying to essentially make accommodation that would be perfect for them, rather than if it was a young family or a growing family for a larger buy-to-let property. The other one is flips. So flips are when you need to realize the profit as soon as possible, kind of one big lump sum. They will lag the long-term and rental aspects of the investment. We normally always only recommend them when the investor isn't able to raise enough capital kind of between well, let's say they're buying a buy to let and they want to buy another buy to let and they can't raise enough capital quickly enough to continue on that journey, then we can help with some flips to get that initial lump sum of money that can later then be invested into long-term strategies. We'll always recommend the long-term strategy on top of flips, because that's the way how you can actually gain exposure to the capital growth, capital appreciation aspects of it, and get some long-term returns on it. Yeah, the idea here is you essentially just buy derelict property in an area that is quite popular between owners occupiers. So yeah, you would look to do it up and to sell it for a profit. It's fairly simple on that side. So yeah, so it gives you the potential to make tens of thousands of pounds in one go. But obviously comes with more volatility, more risk. It's more market dependent. So if the markets crash, you might not be able to sell it as quickly as possible or for as much as you wanted. So all of that needs to be taken into consideration. It's of course a little bit more risky than just a very long term buy to.
I think that's the one that a lot of kind of TV programs, and that's been what's been popularized in terms of property investments. A lot of people just think that it's more of the flips, but
Hmm.
that you've got all the different ones there, and you've also been clear in terms of that will be more short term, but ultimately you want a long term strategy.
Yes, so there's always going to be different strategies, and you could be like, this is just touching kind of the surface of it. There is so much more than you can do with it. There is planning gain, for example. You could be buying land without planning, getting planning on it, and selling it on. That's also a strategy that people do. You could be doing ground up developments or commercial to residential developments. This is another one that I forgot to mention. So this is for the big projects and for the experienced and risk tolerant investors. I would even say. So there's massive upside potential with those, but also massive cost and risks. So you would either take a empty commercial property, and fully refit it from inside to fully reconfigure it, put let's say 30 flats into it or something like that, or you would just build from the ground up. So yeah, with all of these planning, much more complicated build process. This is suitable for the kind of end game investors, for the ones who have more money that they can risk, and they can subject it to a greater level of risk than anything else, but at a potential of a much higher upside. So yeah, so there are obviously strategies for everyone here, and it's just important to pick to think why you're doing this. What's your end goal? Do you want to have a pension? Do you want to leave something for your kids? Or do you want to quit your job, or do you just want, do you just like it and you want to get involved with it? So there is something for everyone in property. Just need to really think about it and figure out what it is that's close to your heart.
And what are the common mistakes people make when they start out as an investor?
So I usually see three major ones. The first one would be getting emotionally invested. So I get that it's exciting and close to a lot of people's hearts. And I remember how I felt when I first started doing property investment, property deals. But yeah, you need to understand it's not your own home, and what the tenants need may be very different to what you want or think that they will need. Yeah, and also just, well, don't try to make a deal work when it clearly doesn't. See people who have invested time into a deal start going, well, maybe if I get a little bit extra on the rental side, maybe it's going to work. Maybe if I can get that valuation higher, it should be all fine when things start going south. And these are usually just hopes, and not based on fact. And yeah, sometimes we just have to let a deal go, no matter how much time we've put into it. The second one would be massively underestimating costs or timescales. So the building sector is among the fastest ones to get changes introduced into it. Well, usually those changes are price hikes. Unfortunately, they get passed down the chain very, very quickly, and they get passed down to the end user essentially straight away. So yeah, so costs can vary greatly across like even a couple of months span. So what I would suggest doing with that to protect yourself is first of all building a great relationship with your tradespeople. So people that you work with all the time, ask them how long the quotes stand for, and yeah, just have a good relationship, and I'm sure they will, they will give you the heads up if something is about to get more expensive, or if it does get more expensive, they'll work with you to fix the problem. But yeah, also include contingency, obviously, both in time and money. That's been a lifesaver to many projects. Yeah, and the last one as well, it would be probably misplacing their trust. So, well, we already spoke about this. There are many property gurus that nowadays, and quite often they will greatly exaggerate the upsides while minimizing downsides. I get the need in getting people excited about something, but it is, in the end of the day, it is a business, and it needs to be run as one. Yeah, so it's very, very important to learn about that. If you can't learn about it at the start, if you don't have the resources or the kind of availability of somebody who you really trust, then at least quiz the people that you work with, double check with them, ask them, go get second opinions. It's all going to pay off in the long term. And for people who really care about how you do, if they work with you, they will be happy to answer their odd extra questions. We're always getting asked this or that by the clients. They want to know why this area works, why that doesn't, why we need to go this way rather than that way with a certain property. We're always happy to tell them about all of that, because, well, in the end of the day, it pays dividends. It's very, very important. That would probably be the one mistake where the potential of losing money is the biggest. Yeah, so do your own due diligence, double check, ask other people, and try to figure out why certain figures are as they are.
Yeah, it's so important to have, support. What is the advantage of having that support versus doing it on your own?
Of course, so as with everything, I guess, when you're doing it for the very first time, well, you can't really expect to be great at it straight away. You can't expect to succeed the first time around. So I guess the question is whether you have, first of all, whether you need to learn this. So if you really want to learn everything about property, you want to do it full time, that is what kind of your goal is, then yeah, you might want to go and actually put more effort into learning it and into getting to know it.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't need it, then it's probably worth it working with somebody who's done it multiple times and who does it pretty much daily. Yeah, it also, if you go and do it on your own, you've got to be prepared to pay for any of the mistakes that you make, because unfortunately in investment all mistakes cost at least some sort of money or time. So I would suggest maybe a mixed approach. So if you're just starting out, yeah, there's no reason why you can't approach somebody and just ask them to guide you through the first couple of deals. Ask them the questions, tap into their network. So if you are working with a sourcer and they tell you, oh, this is how we're going to do it, ask them why, ask them what they're doing differently, ask them why they're doing certain things. In that way, you'll pay a little bit more upfront in the short term, so it's going to be a tiny bit more expensive potentially. But the amount that you get in, first of all, knowledge, and secondly, just help in the background, even with negotiations, you might never know how much you saved, but you'll definitely save quite a bit with the help of a good sourcer.
And as you know, there are various different assets that people could buy. And what are the, there are various different assets that people could buy to invest and grow their wealth. What are the different types that you have invested in or you know about?
Certainly, you're right. We might be a tiny bit biased on our side. However, we do work with people who have very diverse portfolios, and well, myself including, I do also own stocks and shares on top of the property investments. So we'll never say don't diversify. We'll never say, oh, property is much better than everything else. It's just very different. So what you need to think about when you decide on a particular asset class is, first of all, your ultimate investment goal. So I already mentioned this. What do you want to leave this as inheritance for your future generations? Do you want to be in and out, in 10 years, cash out and then go do something else, or whatever, whatever other plans you do have for your future. Then also you've got to consider your risk tolerance and time scales as well. And also, I guess, just if you like a particular asset class, because a lot of people really like investing in art. I like art, but I wouldn't know enough about it, um, or I guess I'm not into it that much to be making it my kind of full-time business investing in it. So yeah, also considerations such as leverage and volatility and investment time scales for each are very different. So take that into account. But yeah, property is a long-term investment. It has proven to be one of the safer ones because you own the bricks and mortar behind it. So you don't just own a part of a company that's promised you in shares. You own something that's tangible. And they're not building any more land, So we've got that benefit at all times. But yeah, everyone is different, and everyone is going to choose differently. So feel free to choose what you like. Just make sure that you learn.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing. And what is there a book that you would recommend for people to read?
So I thought about this for a while, and even though I swear by Rich Dad Poor Dad, I know that there's quite a lot of controversy around the author itself. But I feel a book is a book. It doesn't transfer anything apart from the knowledge that's been put into it, and I just love that particular one. But yeah, I'm not actually going to recommend the book in this case. I thought about it long and hard, and I realized that, like, I'm sure there are great ones, and I'm sure I probably have read a couple that were really, really good at the time. But I just feel like in this industry, visual experience and even hands-on experience is much, much more valuable than anything that you could read. So I'd actually suggest, if people want to learn more about it, just go into YouTube and, just learning about different topics as you go. For example, you can start with searching something like buy to let basics, and I'm sure there's going to be a couple of great videos that show everything that is required about it. Of course, I'm going to say to take the information with a pinch of salt, because there is a lot of outdated and quite frankly false information in the industry about it. But fairly quickly you should just start to be able to kind of separate it and figure out which one is true, which one isn't, and which one you need to pay more attention.
Ernest, thank you so much for covering the questions that our audience have been asking. And you've given us a lot of information and a lot of detail to just kind of think about. So then we can go ahead and start to invest. But for if people want to learn about you a little bit more or talk to you or contact you, how can they do that?
Of course. So the best place for that probably would be my LinkedIn. My name there is Ernest Lukovnikovas. So it's Ernest Lukovnikovas. And then yeah, you can see what I post there, and feel free to drop me a message. If you have any questions or want some guidance on a project you're working on, or you just don't even know where to start and you want a bit of guidance, I'll always happily answer. I make it my business to answer all of my LinkedIn messages. So yeah, so feel free to reach out to me, and I'll be happy to help.
And that is a wrap, everybody. Thank you for listening to this week's edition. If you've got any subject that you'd like us to dive into, you know what to do. Leave a comment or email us, talk to us at rootstofruits.com. See you next week. That is all for us today, guys. Join us next week for some more seeds to sow. And please remember to support us by following and leave a rating on our show on whichever platform you're listening to us from. To those watching on YouTube, please leave a like and a subscribe to our channel. All of your support goes a long way. Thank you so much for joining us today. And remember, keep shining.